Mandy and I welcome you back to The Chosen's blended harmony of the gospel. I'm Nancy, this is Mandy, and we are on day 23, part 2, the man born blind. The blind man questioned after healing. His neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit begging?" Some said, "He's the one." Others were saying, "No, but it looks like him." He kept saying, "I am the one." So they asked him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So when I went and washed, I received my sight." "Where is he?" they asked. "I don't know," he said. They brought the man who used to be blind to the Pharisees. The day Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes was a Sabbath. Uh-oh, trouble's coming. Then the Pharisees asked him again how he received his sight. "He put mud on my eyes," he told them. "I washed and I can see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath." But others were saying, "How can a sinful man perform such signs?" And there was a division among them. Again, they asked the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he opened your eyes?" "He's a prophet," he said. The Jews did not believe this about him, that he was blind and received sight, until they summoned the parents of the one who had received his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, the one who was born blind? How then does he now see?" "We know this is our son, and that he was born blind," his parents answered. "But we don't know how he now sees, and we don't know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he's of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said these things because they were afraid of the Jews, since the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him as Messiah, he would be banned from the synagogue. This is why his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So a second time they summoned the man who had been blind and told him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether or not he's a sinner, I don't know. One thing I do know. I was blind and now I see." I love it. I love it. "I already told you," he said, "and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You don't want to become his disciples too, do you?" I love that line. The guy's so fun. They ridiculed him. "You're the man's disciple, but we're Moses' disciples. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but this man, we don't know where he's from." "This is an amazing thing," he told them. "You don't know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he listens to him. Throughout history, no one has ever heard of someone opening the eyes of a person born blind. But if this man were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything." "You were born entirely in sin," they replied, "and you are trying to teach us?" And then they threw him out. I love this story. There's so much in here. Let's go back and look. So first of all, they're passing by, and his disciples ask him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he is born blind?" "Neither his man nor his parents," Jesus says. "This came about so that God's work might be displayed in him." So it's interesting, and a lot of people might even think that today when someone's crippled or handicapped, they're just like, "Oh, well, did you do something wrong, or did your parents sin?" And back then there was a lot of superstition, and people would just think, "Oh, if you're born blind, your mom or dad must have done something wrong." But Jesus is saying, he is blind so that then God's glory can be done, right? God can shine through this man because he's going to be healed, and then everyone can see Jesus' power and then believe in Jesus. So there was a specific reason why this man was born blind for this moment right here. And you might be the same. Maybe there's things you just think, "Oh, I wish my life wasn't this or that." There's going to come a day when it all makes sense, and when you realize that God had you in this certain place or with a certain ability or disability that he's going to use for his glory to either bring people to him or maybe bring you to faith. I know a lot of people get cancer, don't they? And when they get cancer, what do? They turn to Jesus. I know a lot of people who are Christians only because they had cancer. So God can use everything for his glory. And then he spit on the ground, made some mud, and spread the mud on his eyes, and then said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." So he left and washed and came back seeing. So I love this part too. I mean, Jesus spit, so he's getting close to the man. He's touching the man, even though if he's blind, he's probably considered, unclean. But then he put the mud on his eyes, but then he said, "Go wash." He gave him something to do. He gave him part of the action to do, that he could go in faith and wash. The man could have been like, "I'm not going to wash. I don't believe this is going to work." But he did. He's like, "You know what? He told me to wash. I'm going to wash." He washed, and then he was healed. And then he could see. I love this part. The neighbors who had seen him as a beggar are saying, "Isn't this the one who used to sit begging?" And then he kept saying to them, I am the one, I am the one. And they're just like, how are your eyes opened? I mean, instead of rejoicing, everyone's criticizing and wondering all these things. And he said, the man named Jesus, he made mud, spread it on my eyes, told me to wash, I received my sight. So again, instead of just rejoicing that he's been healed, they're questioning all these things and they're wanting to know all these little details. So then they brought him to the Pharisees. And the thing was, Jesus healed on the Sabbath. So again, they're asking, he explains the whole story again. And the Pharisees are criticizing and saying, this man is not of God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath. But others were saying, how can a sinful man perform such signs? And so there was division among them. So some of the Pharisees are not rejoicing in the miracle. They're like, hey, let's nitpick. He healed on the Sabbath. We shouldn't do that. So he must not be of God because he healed on the Sabbath. Other people are saying, he must be from God because unless someone is from God, how can they have the power to heal and make people whole? So they were divided. So then they went and they got his parents and they asked, is this your son, the one who was born blind? How then does he see? And the parents are smart. They say, we know this is our son and he was born blind, but we don't know how he now sees and we don't know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he's of age, he will speak for himself. So the reason the parents don't want to admit that there was a miracle going on is that if people were confessing that Jesus is the Messiah, then they might not be able to come into the synagogue. And there was a lot of turmoil with that. So people really enjoyed Jesus healing, right? But they were afraid to actually confess that he was the Messiah and he was the one that did that because they didn't want any trouble. But Jesus, he's all full of trouble here. So they ask him again. This goes back and forth. And he says, I already told you. And you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You don't want to become his disciple too. I love it. This man's like, I've told the story 3 times now. Nobody's believing me. He just wants to go and enjoy life, right? He can look around and see things, for the first time. And all they want to do is just keep nitpicking. And he finally says, this is an amazing thing. The man told him, you don't know where he's from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he will listen to him. So throughout history, no one has ever heard of someone opening the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything. You were born entirely in sin, they replied, and you were trying to teach us, and then they threw him out. I believe when that man got thrown out, he was probably happy just to be done with these crazy Pharisees that were just back and forth. I love the fact he's like, I've already told you so many times, and you still don't believe me. But he knew that Jesus was the Messiah, and he knew that he could see, and he was thankful and grateful. And it's just so sad to me that the Pharisees, instead of rejoicing, they were just pointing fingers and trying to, find blame and everything. So I hope today that you just realize that we are free from all those nitpicky laws that they had and what God really wants. He wants us to be going out serving others. He wants us to believe in him and be telling other people about him and not just be back there shaking our finger. So have you ever seen a miracle? I've seen some people healed and it's an amazing thing. And I remember I was just rejoicing. I was on my knees, hands up, praising God. It didn't matter to me who did it or even what religious background they were from. Somebody got healed in Russia when I was there, and I was excited. So I hope today that you can just believe that Jesus can still heal today and that you pray for healing. But if he doesn't heal, then maybe there's something else he's going to do through you, because God can use every stage of our life to bring him glory, to show other people that he is the Messiah, maybe to get our faith stronger. There's many reasons for every situation that we're in. So I hope that you can just rejoice in that today and pray for a miracle for someone if you know someone who needs it. And when the miracle happens, don't nitpick, just believe and thank God for that miracle. Have a great day believing that he can still do miracles, and I will see you back here tomorrow. You can get your own copy of A Blended Harmony of the Gospels by The Chosen simply by going to thechosengifts.com. There you can find all kinds of wonderful merchandise to help build your faith this year. Be sure to check out their devotionals and their Bible studies. Have a blessed day.